Okay, looks like we are live, and we actually had a live stream this morning. I'd imagine this one's a little bit smaller because this is going to be our second live stream of the day. Now, our first one, of course, can be found on our Dynasty Fantasy Football channel. Everybody should know that. I mean, if you're not playing Dynasty Fantasy Football at this point, are you even living life? But here, we're going to get a 2022 Best Ball Fantasy Football Draft underway. We're going to continue to do these once a week because I know there are a lot of people that want to get involved with us on these, and I feel like we have gotten significantly better than the draft that we were in last week. Real quick, if you were wanting to join our draft room, what you're going to do is you're going to go over here and go to the Underdog Fantasy lobby, scroll over to the big board. You're actually going to have rookies in this draft. We're going to do a 30-second timer. Looks like crap. We got 11 spots to fill. So this may be something that is taking a little bit of time. Let me send out a link over there on Patreon. Let me send a link in the YouTube live chat real quick to Underdog Fantasy. Please, please, please. Guys, come on. Let's get this draft filled. Go over to Underdog Fantasy real quick. Hop in the big board draft. I will send that link. And of course, I know everybody watching this live stream already has signed up for Underdog Fantasy with promo code FLOCK. But if you go through the link in the description of the video, go through the link in the live chat, go through the link in the comment section, and you use promo code FLOCK, they're going to match your first deposit dollar for dollar up to $100. So I can see we got a couple people coming in this draft room already. So let me give some shout outs to the people in the live stream. We got French Toast, Steven, Abdi, and Will all out in the live stream. Thank y'all for coming out. We got 6 spots left in this mock draft. I'd imagine this fills in a couple minutes. So please run over there and hop in with us ASAP. I promise you I'll let you know how much better your team is than mine. I mean, if this is how it was the last time, let me send out a link to this on Patreon so everybody can go in over there. Okay, so just sent that link out over there on Patreon. And please, if you have not done so already, go down there, drop a like on this live stream. It'd be really cool if we can get a decent amount of people in here. And Suzuki out here. We got Frolicking Heifer out here as well. We got a lot of people that I haven't seen in a while. We got Michael says, good afternoon. How are you doing today? Very well, my friend. I will say I'm flying to go skiing tomorrow. So, of course, I'll be watching the Super Bowl, but I got to fly and get ready tomorrow. So I am not going to be able to live stream at all for the next 7 days or so. That's why we're going to get 2 live streams going today, one on this channel, one on the other. And then let's see, Abdi coming out says start Rashad Penny or Devin Singletary, coming out with the classic. And then Julia says, I've been wanting to ask you for a while, is there a way I can personally contact you to talk about my dynasty and moves to make? Oh yeah, definitely. I mean, if you're looking over there on Patreon, whenever you sign up for Patreon, I actually literally get screenshots of your team, go through and make an in-depth podcast breaking down your dynasty fantasy football team. I mean, just yours truly looking at that team usually for about 10 minutes or so, coming up with any trades that we can see to optimize the roster, because dynasty fantasy football is all about just maximizing your roster. And real quick, everybody in the chat, spam this out, whether you're watching this as a live stream and I want to get your opinion right now, or you're watching this as a video later on, please leave a comment. Who is winning tomorrow and by how many points? Now, Vegas has it as the Rams -4. And obviously Vegas probably knows more than anybody else in this live stream, knows more than anybody watching this video. You know, we always talk about Vegas knowing best. But let me know if you think that there's, going to be something weird tomorrow. And a Freak Stomper coming out says, Kelsey or the 2022 106 Superflex League, it's going to depend on the exact starting lineup requirements and the amount of flex spots that you are going to have. One quarterback league, give me Kelsey over the 106. No question. Suzuki coming out says, Bengals by 7. That is pretty large. Cody says, Calvin Ridley coming back, question mark. I think that Calvin Ridley is by far and away the best value right now in these best ball drafts and in Dynasty. Looks like we have 1 spot left in this draft, so this is going to get going. We got Thomas out in the chat. Thomas, super happy to see you out, my man. And let's scroll this board over, and this draft looks like it should be good to go in 1 second. Julia says McPherson game-winning field goal to take it 31-28. I saw that Cody McPherson, I believe it was plus 10,000 for Super Bowl MVP. So what do y'all think of that? Do you think 101 to odds? What are the odds a kicker can actually be Super Bowl MVP? I know people are probably just getting a little bit too excited about it, but it would be pretty damn funny. And then Zai coming out says it's the year of the Tiger. Real quick, let me put y'all on. Okay, so maybe I thought it was good because I didn't know enough about the situation. I was truly ignorant about it, but I just watched the Tiger Woods documentary on HBO. And my God, it was an interesting story. And we got the 102 here. We got Dreams out here. Super happy to have Isaac in here. Let's see if we have anybody else. Ash Blake, I believe, gets in here a ton. Deezenators, happy to have out. JN, we got JN as well. JN at the 112. Okay, so I can tell y'all we're most likely going Christian McCaffrey and Zai. My friend, this is so much harder to pronounce your name. But Isaac out here, yeah, got the 101. We're going to be drafting against, battled them pretty much every single day leading up into the season. Jan says Bengals by 10. Mr. Sarcastic says Rams looking like the underdogs. I promise y'all right now, I mean, if you go over to Vegas, the Rams are the favorites in this game. The Rams are the favorites. Fringe Toast says Dino's my homie. Okay, so let's see where Dino is. Dino at the 105. Mark is out here. Steven says, I'm Final Fantasy Draft. Okay, so Steven's going to be over here at the 111. And that's also Steven Stefan / educated Tyrone. Yeah, Jonathan Taylor goes here. It's going to be easy for me. I know y'all were making fun of me for taking Christian McCaffrey. I mean, we used to be able to get Christian McCaffrey at like the 108 whenever we were getting our 2022 drafts underway like a month ago. And my entire explanation behind Christian McCaffrey and taking him this early is when you're looking at CMC, while yes, inherently there's a lot of risk with this selection, taking him at the 102. And I am very, very hesitant to ever say that a player is at a higher risk for injury based on previous seasons. I think at this point, we can safely say that Christian McCaffrey is one of those few players that is at that increased risk to actually suffer an injury. But at the same time, with Christian McCaffrey, he has a ceiling that nobody else can match. We've talked about this a ton. I don't want to keep on mentioning this, but if we're just looking at Jonathan Taylor versus 2019 Christian McCaffrey, Jonathan Taylor, the running back one last year, he scored about 80% of the production on a per game basis that CMC had back in 2019. And Jonathan Taylor did that off of mainly touchdowns as well, which we know is a lot more volatile than what you're going to get with the receiving game usage than a Christian McCaffrey. So although I'll agree with you, Christian McCaffrey is inherently a little bit of a risky pick at the 102. At the same time, come on. I mean, this is a player that literally can break fantasy football. We have seen him before have a 33% win rate in best ball. A 33% win rate. That is unheard of. Okay? And that's with him being a first round pick. That's a higher win rate, I'm pretty sure, than what Cooper Kupp had this past year. Kupp was going in the fourth. If you can get 29 points per game out of a running back, and that's in the range of outcomes, I'm going to be willing to suck it up and say, hell yeah, if Christian McCaffrey gets injured, we most likely lose this draft. But at the same time, if he stays healthy, we most likely win it. And you could say that about very few players. JN coming out says, I'm rewatching every Texas game since 2008 for a video. Pray for me. How the hell are you? I don't even know how I'd find that. Okay, so Tyler coming out says, who won the 103 in Mike Williams or the 108 and a 2023 first? I honestly probably would prefer the 108 and a 2023 first with the assumption that it's a Superflex league. And of course, that's going to be Dynasty for everybody. And real quick, if you are wondering how we are getting this draft going, this is a real money fantasy football draft. This is going to be a best ball league. And here, you do not have to submit a starting lineup. Your automatic best starting lineup will be submitted for you at the end of every single week. So if you have a player like Marcus Valdes-Scantling randomly pop for 30 points, then that player is going to slide into your starting lineup for you. And at the same time, there's no waiver wire. So you're going to be in a position where you don't even have to ever look at this league ever again if you don't want to after you draft it, and you'll just have those winnings hit your account at the end of the season. Now, I'm a sicko, so I'm probably going to be going through and looking at the standings after week 1, looking at the standings after week 2, and checking in on all our teams, but I know not everybody is as broken as I am. And here, if we were going to be on the clock at the 2:11, I'm not considering Metcalf, if we're going to be completely honest. I'm going to try something else out. F it. Playing in the Super Bowl tomorrow. Let's take T. Higgins. Let's reach on T. Higgins here at the 2:11. Yes, I'm going to have Higgins over DK Metcalf. I'll get to why I am off DK Metcalf in just a second. I'm sure a lot of people that have been watching our Dynasty channel have kind of realized why I'm just taking my L, because remember, halfway through the season, I mean, we called DK Metcalf a sell high player, and then we are willing to say go buy him low later on when his value had taken a slight hit, and we were laughably wrong. Laughably wrong. I said on weeks to go and buy low on a player like DK Metcalf. It simply never worked out. Okay, we're going to get Jalen Waddle. When we take Christian McCaffrey here, I'm going to try to have a very similar strategy to what we did last season and try to go running back at the first and then a wide receiver. I know we weren't doing this about a month ago, but you have to remember we didn't have the rookie running backs in the player pool about a month ago. Now that we have those rookie running backs available to us, I'm going to be a lot more willing to go and take these wide receivers at the 2-3 turn. And real quick, we have almost 100 people in this live stream. If you have not done so already, please, for the love of God, go down there, drop a like. Nobody has come close to live streaming as much as we have. We live streamed probably over 200 days this season, pretty much every single day, 3 hours plus. I mean, starting in August this year. Nobody else is doing that. Drop a like. It takes y'all 1 second. And then we got Isaac coming out with a massive donation. Thank you, my man. Says, just call me Isaac. I is for Isaac. A is for Azuki, my Japanese name. I'm not Japanese, but happen to be born there. But the star logo at the beginning is just because I thought it looked cool. Okay, that is really cool that you're born in Japan. I'm going to assume that maybe parents are military. I grew up in a military town. My family is not military. My mom just happened to have a job, not with the military, but in that area. So we had a lot of people like that, but that's really cool, my man. And then Tech coming out says, I can get behind T. Higgins over DK Metcalf. And yeah, real quick, let me discuss why I'm letting Isaac get DK Metcalf here at the 212, even though DK Metcalf does have a higher ADP than the combination of both T. Higgins and Jalen Waddle. And a big thing with Metcalf is if we go back and we look at his season this past year, he was the wide receiver 30 on a points per game basis. And of course, you can't just look at points per game and say, okay, well, we know exactly what DK Metcalf is going to be based on, him being the wide receiver 30. No, it doesn't work like that. But what we can do is we can look at the underlying metrics behind it, see that he actually had a very high touchdown rate this past season, a touchdown rate that honestly doesn't really look sustainable. It looks like this is a player that may end up being put into a situation that he has to get to double-digit touchdowns to come close to being a top 18 option. The volume isn't there in Seattle, and if you look at any downside for him to potentially not get there with double-digit touchdowns, let's say that touchdown rate comes down, which the math should, knowing that that touchdown rate is volatile season to season. If the baseline is that low, I know he had a ton of air yards and such, but still there's the outside chance that you possibly have Russell Wilson leaving Seattle, and that's the smallest part of it. But the main part is T. Higgins crushed DK Metcalf this past year with their fantasy points per game, and T. Higgins is younger than DK Metcalf. T. Higgins is playing with a younger quarterback than DK Metcalf's. T. Higgins has a more stable situation than DK Metcalf. So I'm going to be willing to take Higgins over Metcalf. Okay, so Mr. TD says, I expect people that are drafting already should be really sharp. Is that true? I would say mainly yes. Now, you have to think of a couple things here. So when we are drafting at this point of the offseason, okay, first off, let me give out a massive ad read because we haven't done this yet. And for the love of God, if you have not already, go sign up for Underdog Fantasy. This is where we are drafting. You'd find the link in the description of the video, find the link in the live chat, find the link in the comment section. When you sign up, you support this channel more than you would ever believe. B, they'll match your first deposit dollar for dollar up to $100. And C, you'll make me incredibly happy, and you can get into drafts with us, whether you want to get into draft, by yourself with 11 other random people, wait until we go live and hop in a draft with us. You can do any of that, or you can just go check out some of the player props they have there, but that's going to definitely be your best decision. If you want to support this channel, go use promo code FLOCK. Find the links below. Okay, so now we are about to be back up on the clock. We've gone Christian McCaffrey, T. Higgins, Jalen Waddle with our first 3 selections. I'm assuming Ridley's already off the board. Yeah, fun guy, hates stacks, steals Calvin Ridley from us. That's a great team he has overall. Okay, so we get Aaron Jones and Ezekiel Elliott falling to us at the 4-5 turn. God dang. We're going to take Zeke. Not a big fan of it. Of course, Ezekiel Elliott looked horrendous. He looked very bad at the end of last year. But at the end of the day, if you look at the contract situation that Ezekiel Elliott has going into next season, is a running back that you're pretty much guaranteed he will be the starting running back for the Dallas Cowboys. Like they're not going to hand it over to Tony Pollard. If you look at his contract, what I'm worried about with this selection of Ezekiel Elliott is maybe he is truly a touchdown or bust player if we're taking him at the 411. However, if we're looking at the other running backs in this range, someone like Aaron Jones, I would say if he's splitting this backfield with A.J. Dillon and there's the outside chance that you have Rodgers leaving and this offense almost cratering, I would be more willing to just make that bet on Zeke. And we're going to go down and we're going to take Chris Godwin here. Now, I am slightly concerned with Chris Godwin that this is a player that did suffer that knee injury later on in the year. So given the timetable we're maybe expecting with Chris Godwin, this is a wide receiver that maybe has his injury lingering into the beginning part of this next season. Of course, he's a free agent this offseason as well. But a big thing is this is going to be a tournament style. So y'all know a lot of the drafts we had a month ago were just private drafts with only 12 people where you didn't have the playoffs at the end. And in a format like that, we were avoiding these injured guys, someone like Chris Godwin, someone like J.K. Dobbins, because if they missed the beginning part of next season, it was going to be critical because their week 1 is worth just as much as week 16. Whereas this is going to be that tournament setting. So you actually have a large portion of the money being dedicated to the performance of your team once you get to the fantasy football playoffs. And for that reason, I'm going to be willing to reach a little bit on someone like Chris Godwin, who, we have seen him break fantasy football before. We've seen him back in 2019 as the wide receiver 2 overall. I know that was in a prolific offense with Jameis Winston, but still, we've seen it. Isaac coming out, says, yeah, my dad was in the Navy. I've been to 48 states, moved a lot as a kid. Also, I'm drafting random teams to diversify my percentage owned this year. Okay, real quick, 48 states that is. Okay, so apparently Isaac's more American than anybody else here if he's lived in 48 states. That's pretty damn cool, my man. And a big thing is with drafting random teams, I don't necessarily like that idea in terms of just drafting players that are highest at ADP, especially at this time of the offseason, because this ADP is not going to be set. There have not been enough drafts to really have an extremely efficient list of ADP at this point. Once we get to August, hell yes. That ADP list is going to be very accurate, but I'm sure outside of our Christian McCaffrey pick, I think we have quote unquote reached on every single one of our options so far in this draft if you compare it to where ADP is going. So I would say out of the entire offseason, this is probably the best time to go and draft your guys because we don't know how ADP is going to shape up. We don't know where Chris Godwin is eventually going to be going in August. We don't know where Ezekiel Elliott is going to be going in August. So, if we think that Zeke's a fine value at the 411, I don't see how he falls much lower than this, given that Dallas Cowboys offense. I'm going to be fine, quote unquote, reaching on those players according to ADP. Love these picks here. Hollywood Brown at the 602. Hollywood is actually my most drafted player in these drafts at this point. If you're looking at where Hollywood Brown was in points per game with Lamar Jackson last year, he was a top 10 wide receiver in points per game with Lamar Jackson under center. Now, it was over a smaller sample. Yes, it was only half the year. But nonetheless, that's very important if you were looking at the projection for Hollywood Brown going forward. This is a wide receiver that is only 25 years old, drafted in 2019, drafted in that same class as guys like DK Metcalf up here. And despite Hollywood being significantly more productive, you were getting that massive discount on him based on the Lamar Jackson injury last year. And Isaac coming out clarifying says, no, I visited 48 states. Okay, yeah. You know, I probably should have known that. I'm probably just an idiot, and we should have read between the tea leaves on that one. Okay, but nonetheless, we are going to be in a good spot if we get Burrow falling to us. I don't want to speak too early. We'll see what Dino does. He has Jamar Chase. Okay, so he doesn't take Burrow. This would have been the one team I'd be worried about because he had Jamar Chase for that stack. Gabriel Davis. This is the swagger team here, okay? We got T. Higgins there at the end of the second. Let's get that stack in. Let's go Joe Burrow. He has an ADP of 55. We're getting him at 71. Compared to some of this other quarterback value, Justin Herbert going at the 407. Could not be more excited about Joe Burrow with this team in particular when we have T. Higgins. Okay, so Isaac on the clock. He's gone 3 running backs. He takes Dallas Goedert. I mean, I had a ton of Dallas Goedert. Going to be interested to see if he ends up going Jalen Hurts as he has Devonta Smith and Goddard on the same team. Unless Jalen Hurts, no, Jalen Hurts has not been drafted yet. Okay, so yeah, he went Jalen Hurts. Okay, that was going to be a really interesting selection because, I mean, there was no way in hell Jalen Hurts was going to make it back to him. Okay, so now we are on the clock. Feel like we have a very balanced roster so far. Brandon Cooks, Brandon Ayuk. Yeah, we're going to take Garrett Wilson. I'm assuming, yeah, JN took Treylon Burks at the 601. We're taking Garrett Wilson. Garrett Wilson looks like he is going to end up being the first wide receiver off the NFL draft board. I am personally going to prefer Treylon Burks over him. However, if we're getting Garrett Wilson at the 702, keep in mind he's not a Jamar Chase level prospect. Jamar Chase last year was going in the 4th, 5th round. He was going in the 4th round all offseason. Then whenever he had the drops in the preseason, then he actually ended up falling to the 5th. Now, I'm not saying that because, Jamar Chase was going in the 4th, we need to be drafting Garrett Wilson in the 7th. Of course, that'd be horrendous analysis. But just to put some context behind where you may expect these wide receivers to be drafted in August, Devonta Smith was also in this range this past year, and that was in an offense that didn't really project to be pass heavy. So if we're going to get Garrett Wilson here at the 702 as an elite wide receiver prospect, that will definitely not make it outside the top 15 picks in the NFL draft. So he will be playing snaps, running routes year one. Never led Ohio State in targets, receiving yards per game, or any volume metric that you're going to find, but he played alongside Chris Olave, going to be another first-round pick in this year's NFL draft, and also he played alongside Jackson Smith. Not going to say it, even though a million people have tried to teach me how to, his last name, but he played alongside the wide receiver 1 in next year's draft as well. That looks like he is a Jamar Chase level prospect. So I'm fine with Garrett Wilson at the 702. My issue with a couple of these other players in this range, say someone like Brandon Ayuk, that definitely has the talent, is while I love me some Trey Lance, y'all know nobody's been higher on Trey Lance than I have for a very long time now. The issue with Trey Lance is I'm a little bit worried that it's going to be a very similar situation to what we'd have in Philadelphia last year, while Lance himself may be able to find fantasy success based on the situation he's playing in, as well as his rushing upside. I'm worried that the passing volume is going to be limited in San Francisco, that it may not provide just the adequate number of targets to go around for Brandon Ayuk to find success. I'd rather take the bet on the talent profile with a Garrett Wilson, especially when we're getting him as our wide receiver 4. Okay. See what Jayan says. Jayan says Burks had an absurd level of touches at Arkansas. Yeah, I mean, if you're looking at Treylon Burks and his market share numbers, they're just straight up ridiculous. Big Z says, I'm late, so who went first? Okay, so let me scroll up to the top of the draft board real quick. And if you are late to the live stream, all I ask is make sure you drop that like as you come into the stream. So this is the board so far. We've reached on a decent amount of players here according to ADP, but as I've discussed before, I'm going to be hesitant to really stray away from ADP heavily once we get to August. And this ADP list is very efficient, and it's set with thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands of drafts, but there have only been a couple hundred drafts here. I mean, this ADP list is by no means efficient, especially with these rookies. Like Kenneth Walker can potentially be the number 1 running back off the board in the NFL draft coming up, and you're getting him 3 rounds after Breece Hall. I mean, way after Breece Hall. You're getting him, I believe that's 26 picks behind him. Now, of course, with Breece Hall, he's going to be a much better pass catcher, so I would prefer Breece Hall in fantasy. But still, if we're talking the difference of 26 picks, that's a fantastic selection by JN of Kenneth Walker there. Clyde Edwards-Helaire ends up going at the 803. Not going to lie, I told myself I wasn't going to be drafting Clyde Edwards-Helaire at all, but a couple days ago, whenever he fell to us in the 8th round, and we were very thin on running backs, we ended up just having to take him. It wasn't fun, to say the least. Now, let's go through and let's try to figure out if we made the wrong choice in selecting Ezekiel Elliott here at the 411. Now, the question we have to ask ourselves is, say if we would have passed on Zeke, grabbed another wide receiver, the wide receiver I probably would have taken instead of him would have been most likely Elijah Moore. If we would have gone Elijah Moore, then we would have had to pass on Garrett Wilson and go Leonard Fournette. So would you prefer the combination of Ezekiel Elliott and Garrett Wilson, or Elijah Moore and Leonard Fournette? I really don't know. I just think the security that you're getting with Zeke and the contract and the offense that he's playing in, it's going to be hard for me to pass on him. Okay, so you have Courtland Sutton going at 805. Hate the Courtland Sutton selection. I mean, I've never been a Courtland Sutton guy, but who am I to talk when Don Wizard has the red experience badge and I'm sitting here naked with nothing on? So he probably knows more than I do if he's putting in this volume of leagues. Drake London goes to the 806. Love that pick of Drake London. Jayan says he was going to take CEH if it wasn't for Walker. Isaiah Spiller goes to the 807. I was really hoping Isaiah Spiller was going to be making it back to us. I'm telling you right now, these rookies are not going to be this low in ADP once we actually get past the NFL draft and people know the situation that these players are going to be in. Okay, so Dawson Knox is a player that I'm most likely going to find myself avoiding. Now, the issue with Dawson Knox is the touchdown rate doesn't look sustainable from where it sat last year. Now, Dawson Knox goes anyway, so it's not really going to have a conversation that we have to look at, but he really feels like Robert Tonyan from 2020. Now, he didn't have the 1 touchdown per 7 targets that Robert Tonyan did, and he was clearly the easiest to avoid in all of fantasy football, but still, I mean, it did have a pretty high touchdown rate. Now, what's nice is obviously playing with Josh Allen in an offense that there will be more than enough balls to go around, and to go along with this, you are going to have Emmanuel Sanders gone, but yada, yada, yada. We need to find our next guy. I feel like we honestly may end up going wide receiver here because I think Isaac's going to have to double tap him. We're going to go with our guy Juju. I'm not going to be drafting based off of ADP very often. Y'all have seen this. But if Juju's sitting at the top of ADP, I feel like through thick and through thin, he's been there for me. He's disappointed me every single year. Who am I to turn my back on him now? Let's take him at the 811. Okay, so that's going to be our 5th wide receiver. And keep in mind, roster construction is going to be incredibly important in a best ball format. Since we invested early into the quarterback position here with Joe Burrow, I would be fine capping out at 2 quarterbacks, especially if we get one in this range. However, if we're looking at the quarterbacks that we could be selecting here, really nobody stands out as there aren't really any potential stack options. Now, we do have Ezekiel Elliott, and maybe we just cannibalize as many touchdowns as we can in Dallas by deciding to go with Dalton Schultz here as our first tight end off the board. I'm concerned because Dalton Schultz is going to be a free agent this offseason. You have Gallup as a free agent. I know a lot of people are talking about Amari Cooper getting cut. They could save $16 million by cutting Amari Cooper. I'm unsure if they're going to do so, unsure if they're going to bring Dalton Schultz back, unsure if this offense can be first in yards and points scored this upcoming season. But I'll take Dalton Schultz at the 902, and I shouldn't say yards and points scored. I know they're first scored and points scored per game, but unsure about yards. I think I remember hearing yards. Okay, so Caden coming out says, off came out with a rookie wide receiver landing spots and had Burke like 29th to the Dolphins, 7th wide receiver taking. I'm assuming you meant PFF. And real quick, that's not too surprising. There have been a lot of real life NFL people that have been down on Treylon Burks. Now, of course, everybody in the Dynasty community, we get in our own little echo chamber and we just talk about a player like Treylon Burks being the wide receiver 1, not necessarily having any questions about it. And we just echo it back and forth to each other how great Treylon Burks is. And really, if anybody steps up and says anything outside of Treylon Burks being the wide receiver 1, they're laughed off the planet. That's not necessarily going to be the case from a real life NFL perspective because, I mean, you have a lot of people just with the assumption that Treylon Burks can't run the full route tree. I am not pretending that I'm a professional scout by any means, so I'm not going to say that. What I'm going to say is he has the breakout age. He dominated in a top conference at the same time. If you look at the percentage of the overall passing yardage he accounted for. So I am not going to be willing to come out here and say that there are any negatives in watching the film with Treylon Burks, but I am interested to see the draft capital that he gets. I have seen more mock drafts, real life NFL mock drafts, of having Treylon Burks as a late first round pick than I have seen NFL mock drafts of having Treylon Burks as the first wide receiver off the board. Will says, my drafts lately would have been more than 2 running backs at this stage just because it gets so disgusting in the later rounds for that position. It has hurt me greatly at wide receiver, though. That's definitely a big thing that I've been trying to strike a nice balance with, is I've found myself kind of getting put in a bad spot. The last live stream we did, I ended up taking like a ridiculous 4 running backs in a row. We were going to go with the very hyper fragile running back build, and we were going to build around about 10 wide receivers and attack the position with quantity rather than quality. But the difference between these underdog drafts and then a different platform that you would look at is with underdog, people understand the value of those late round wide receivers. People understand how you can get them randomly popping in your starting lineup on a week-to-week basis. So they are not going to stop drafting them. So whenever we have the combination of Christian McCaffrey and Ezekiel Elliott, I'm going to be fine in terms of not feeling the necessity to reach on the running back position. I'm going to continue to take whoever I perceive to be the best value available to us when they fall. And I think that this quarterback tier here, massive value. Love getting guys like Stafford, Aaron Rodgers, Russell Wilson. Love seeing Justin Fields fall to the 1003 just so I can say, suck it, Justin Fields lovers, Trey Lance haters. Y'all know I've been the captain of the Trey Lance over Justin Fields team for really since the day of the NFL draft. And we're going to see in best ball leagues, Trey Lance at the 707, Justin Fields at the 1003. So, of course, love to see that. Okay, so let's go through. We got David Bell at the 1005. Remember, oh my gosh. Remember when people were taking Cordell Patterson whenever we first started these drafts up in the 3rd, 4th round? Oh, thank God people have gotten smarter. Thank God. That was just sad, and I'm happy to see that mistake has been fixed. Okay, so I am not going to lie. I do not know where we're going here. Like, the players that stand out to me, the thing is, when we're picking on the turn, I love the Deshaun Watson selection. I probably would have taken Watson if he made it back to us. Ramondre Stevenson, great pick as well. So if we take Fant here, we're committing ourselves into a 2 tight end build, and we are not going to be looking at the tight end position for the rest of the draft. Which, of course, has some positives. You know what? We may end up... Let's see what they do. Okay, Cordell Patterson at the 1009. Okay, so Isaac has 4 running backs, 3 receivers. Okay, I'm operating under the assumption that Isaac cannot take 2 of these running... I mean, even if he takes 2, we got 1 left over. And in my opinion, Michael Gallup, even with the injury, is going to be in his own tier. Of course, he's a free agent this offseason. Ooh. We have 5 wide receivers. We have Schultz. If we did not take Schultz, I'd be taking Noah Fant here. But I'm going to be a lot more inclined to go with the 3 tight end build and take 2 guys very late in the David Njoku tier rather than trying to take those shots on wide receivers, knowing that there's really not going to be anything left over. And if we take Noah Fant here, we completely scratch any tight ends off the board the rest of the way. So we're going to take Gallup at the 10-11 with the assumption that Isaac can't... I mean, he can't box us out of running back at all. Literally, it wouldn't be possible. He goes DJ Chark. Completely fine seeing DJ Chark go off the board. It wouldn't have been my selection on the way back. Jameson Williams is a player that I'm a lot lower on in Dynasty than most people, but it's funny, in Dynasty fantasy football, Jameson Williams is actually going up there ahead of guys like Chris Olave. I mean, if we're looking at Chris Olave, he goes to the 905 in this draft, and you see Jameson Williams this much further down. So if you're looking at me on my Dynasty channel, you're probably going to see me clowning on anybody taking Jameson Williams, but this is going to be a significantly cheaper price point. I'd be fine if someone wanted to take him here, but keep in mind, the injury may linger into the beginning of next season. We already have Chris Godwin with a potential lingering injury. I know we are reaching severely on this pick. We're going to go Alexander Madison The reason we're taking Madison is essentially there's no reason to have any kind of bet whatsoever currently on Dalvin Cook. We didn't draft Dalvin Cook in this league. So all of a sudden, if Dalvin Cook were to go down and we're standing with Alexander Mattison, we saw based on the volume, not only as a rusher, but also in the receiving game this past season, that Alexander Mattison, has proven that he would be a top 5 running back in fantasy, going out there, getting 8 targets out of the backfield, getting close to 30 touches overall. And that's on a consistent basis. And that is projectable as well. You can project Alexander Mattison as a top 5 running back when there is no Dalvin Cook. And I really don't see any change in that situation this upcoming season. If you look at the contract for Alexander Mattison as well as the contract for Dalvin Cook, I'd be surprised if they bring another running back in. So I'm going to be fine taking Madison at the 1102, kind of just as a swing for the fences, hoping that we get 3-4 games where Dalvin Cook misses and we have a running back 1 performance in there with Alexander Mattison. I know a lot of people are on Joshua Palmer because, obviously you have Mike Williams as well as the potential of Jalen Guyton leaving Los Angeles. Joshua Palmer did flash in 2 games in particular this past season, but he wasn't a great prospect coming out of Tennessee. Nobody really even had him on the radar whenever he was selected in the 3rd round last year's draft. Everybody's like, well, who that? Even including myself. I was going, and after every single wide receiver was drafted, I live streamed last year going and giving, just a complete overview of them because we had been scouting those players. We had written our Dynasty Rookie Draft Guide and we had so much information on them. Joshua Palmer was not someone on my radar to go anywhere close to that range. I had to figure out who the hell Joshua Palmer was. I'm not a massive fan of him. Kyron Williams, the 11-10, completely fine with that selection. Kyron Williams does have receiving upside. Jerry says, I hope to Jesus Jameson does not get drafted to the Kansas City Chiefs. Honestly, it's a real possibility that he falls to the late first and goes to the Kansas City Chiefs, which would suck after me going through and talking about how I'm fading him, how I'm going to prefer to take Chris Olave in the same range as he's healthier, how he outproduced Jameson Williams in the same exact situation, how he showed dominance that Jameson Williams didn't even do at Alabama. So, when we're talking all this smack, taking Chris Olave over Jameson Williams, it will. George Pickens goes to JN at the 11-12. Let me see some other players that are available in this range. That may just be a full-on dynasty pick. George Pickens goes ahead of Jameson Williams, goes ahead of Jarvis. A big thing with Jarvis is he's just not going to be with the Browns. We've said this time and time again. If anybody has a good feeling on where Jarvis Landry is going to be this upcoming season, please give me some insight. They can end up saving $15 million by moving on from him. So it's essentially, does he A, restructure that contract, or B, is he playing somewhere else? And of course, if Jarvis Landry is going to get the usual volume that he has seen, we don't need to see the Miami Dolphins 10 targets a game, but if he can get to the 7-8 targets a game that we have seen previously in Cleveland, and there's just in a completely barren wide receiver core, Jarvis Landry is the best value pick that you can get here in the 12th round. However, we just don't know what the situation is going to look like. Jane coming out says, George Pickens is an absolute late steal, going to be knocked for missing time. A big thing with George Pickens is I understand the upside. Like this little wide receiver that went out there, 5-star prospect, goes to Georgia, dominates his freshman season. But are we sure there's a ton of upside with this pick? Maybe I am overrating the importance of an 11th, 12th round pick. I would prefer someone like Cole Kmet, honestly, quite easily over over George Pickens. Derek says, would you fade a top 3 wide receiver if they go to Philly or Kansas City? I'm not going to be fading a top 3 wide receiver if they go to Kansas City. I will be happily pursuing that top 3 wide receiver if they go to Kansas City, despite the target share being so concentrated between Tyreek Hill and Travis Kelce over the past few seasons. If they end up selecting a top 3 wide receiver at the end of the first, we can assume that's going to change. Okay. So right now we have Burrow at quarterback. We have the stack at wide receiver with T. Higgins. We also have Jalen Waddle, Chris Godwin, Garrett Wilson, Juju Smith-Schuster, Michael Gallup. We have a little bit of a Dallas stack going as well with the combination of Gallup, Dalton Schultz, Ezekiel Elliott at running back. We also have Christian McCaffrey, Zeke, and Alexander Mattison. And real quick, we actually took Alexander Mattison over Melvin Gordon. Completely fine if someone wants to make the argument that Melvin Gordon's the better selection, that Melvin Gordon could have a higher floor week to week depending on where he signs this offseason. I think that's a completely fair argument. I'm just going to take Alexander Mattison. Maybe once Melvin Gordon signs, that will change. Jan says, the dude literally didn't even have to come back for his junior year, and he chose to help them win a natty. Just because he did that doesn't mean he's going to be any better of a wide receiver in the NFL. We can come out here and talk about his character all we want, but I really care just about other things that are more measurable. Okay, so trying to figure out where we're going to be. We're going to take, actually, that was a bad pick. I don't think this pick really matters. I'll explain my thought process in 1 second. Irv Smith Jr., that was definitely the player I wanted. I have 2 guys in mind that I want, and it was just dependent on who we think Isaac's going to want to take at the 12-13 turn on in which order we should have drafted these 2 options. Give me 1 second and I'll explain who else we were looking to get. Okay, Laviska Shenault goes to the 12-12. I definitely prefer this value on Laviska than I would with the previous value that you had on DJ Chark. I know Chark's a free agent this offseason, but still be very hesitant to assume that a team's going to give him any kind of commitment. Okay, so Isaac, 4 running backs, 5 wide receiver build. I'd assume he probably ends up going... Yeah, we made a horrible mistake. Tua Tagovailoa was going to be our guy. I'm not a big Tua fan, but we do have Jalen Waddle as our wide receiver 2 here, so we were looking to get that stack in. We may pivot over and now just go with 3 quarterbacks and get some players a little bit later on. We're going to take Van Jefferson. Van Jefferson, a wide receiver that we were making fun of people for drafting at the very end of drafts last year, and oh my gosh, we couldn't have been more wrong. I mean, Van Jefferson, let me throw y'all back to what we were saying about Van Jefferson and how much of an idiot I was. Let me real quick actually show y'all this draft board in case you've not had the chance to see it. But yeah, last year I was coming out saying, oh my God, look at this person draft Van Jefferson in the 17th round. Do they not know Van Jefferson was 24 years old last year as a rookie and he failed and he was supposed to be the best pro route runner in the class? Clearly this player has no talent. They wasted a pick in the 2nd round. And oh my gosh, yeah. Van Jefferson turns into an every down player who has the elite speed, who has the best ball appeal that can pop in your starting lineup randomly any given week. So Van Jefferson, great pick at the 1302. Marvin Jones, I think Marvin Jones, honestly, maybe the best value here at the 1306. I think now that we see Marvin Jones off the board, if anything, we probably made a massive mistake and should have gone Marvin Jones. Looking back on this draft, I think you can make an argument, given the contract that Marvin Jones has in Jacksonville, with the assumption that you're not getting DJ Chark back in Jacksonville this next season, that Marvin Jones will be an every down player with the assumption that Trevor Lawrence takes a step forward this upcoming season. He probably has a higher floor than any wide receiver going in this range. He probably should be going up closer ahead of Russell Gage, Joshua Palmer. So looking back in this, I think we just made a very bad selection with Van Jefferson at the 1302. I think, honestly, maybe Marvin Jones is the better option. Jane says, we can agree to disagree, then I'll gladly take up by George Pickens stock. Yeah, I'm completely fine seeing the George Pickens upside case. And in Dynasty, of course, it's completely fine to take him here. I'm just a little hesitant to say so in a best ball format. Okay, so Nico Collins at the 1311, Jahan Dotson at the 1310. Dotson is a wide receiver that, I mean, I honestly probably have to give people an apology for. This is another guy that literally last week I was coming out and saying how I thought Dotson was overhyped in Dynasty, how he was a wide receiver that had to stay all 4 years at Penn State, yada, yada, yada. He didn't break out until his junior season. If you go in and dive into the context of that production at Penn State, Dotson actually does have a pretty good excuse for not being able to be productive right away when he got there and having to actually stay all 4 years. This is a wide receiver that was playing alongside KJ Hamler his first year on campus. Not only KJ Hamler, but also Pat Freiermuth. So he gets to campus playing next to KJ Hamler, Pat Freiermuth. KJ Hamler is 2nd round pick in the NFL draft. Fantastic player. You're not expecting Dotson to be able to outperform him at 18 years old. Second year, he actually does take a step forward. I mean, he's still playing with Pat Freiermuth. Once you get Freiermuth off that campus, you actually get that breakout from Dotson, and he's able to be hyper productive as well and account for a very high percentage of his team's overall yardage. I believe that number was close to 40%. And obviously Penn State's a pretty big program. So I think while I'm not going to be high on Dotson by any means now, He was a player that we were previously talking about being overdrafted, and I think I did not fully understand the context of his production, and I owe everybody an apology because of that. Okay, so Logan Thomas, the 1404. Logan Thomas ran literally a crap ton of routes 2 years ago in an offense that just had nobody else to throw the ball to. We'll see what Washington can do. And Isaac coming out says, sorry, Mason, I wanted to get my quarterback 2 out of the way. Yeah, taking Tua from us at the 1301. I'm not going to fight with you too much. I'm never going to be a massive fan of Tua. But I just thought that he fit this team perfectly if we were talking about just getting those 2020 quarterbacks, getting Joe Burrow, getting Tua Tagovailoa, stacking them with T. Higgins and Jalen Waddle. Okay, Kenneth Gainwell at the 1406, the only running back under contract in Philadelphia next year outside of Miles Sanders, of course. Rachaad White, supposedly some great pass-catching running back, but at the same time, he looks like he could potentially go on day 3 of the NFL draft. Okay, I'm put in a little bit of an interesting situation here in that, in my opinion, and I hate to say this, Chuba Hubbard's the best value at this point at running back. Now, I do prefer Chuba Hubbard in a vacuum over a lot of these other options. However, when we have Christian McCaffrey, I am not wanting to draft our own handcuffs. So I'm actively going to be avoiding Chuba Hubbard simply because we have CMC. Carson Wentz, Tyler Higbee. Do we just say it, F it, and draft Mac Jones that he's fallen 14 picks in ADP? I don't think Isaac's going to take him. In a vacuum, I go Chuba Hubbard here. But when we have Christian McCaffrey, I'm going to prefer to just chase that ceiling. We'll take Rachaad White, 10 picks behind ADP, and simply just hoping that he ends up getting drafted in a situation where he's able to be the pass-catching running back there and play a significant amount of snaps. Yeah, so Isaac's not going to take another quarterback. He already has 2. We'll get Mac Jones. And honestly, getting Mac Jones, he has an ADP of pick 151. I mean, we took him at pick 170. I'm fine with it. I think if we do get a third quarterback falling to us at a value, because this is going to be a 20-round underdog draft compared to an 18-round, I will be fine taking a third quarterback if a value presents itself. Jerry coming out says something about Antonio Brown. Okay, let me look up, see what just broke with Antonio Brown. Hopefully you're not trolling us. All you say is AB isn't done. Okay, so if AB isn't done, there better be some news on why you're saying this. Antonio Brown wants Kanye West to buy the Broncos. Is that what we're talking about here? Okay, this is what we're talking about. This is what we distracted the live stream with. My main takeaway from this is how much money does Kanye West have? That's my main takeaway. Okay, AB posted like a Darth Vader looking thing on Instagram. Is that what we're talking about? I don't know. Someone fill me in if I'm missing something. Uncle Andy says, Kenyon Drake, I like as a late round running back. Love me some Kenyon Drake with where his current price point is. I mean, with Kenyon Drake signed the $11 million contract guaranteed last offseason, you know that he is going to be that secondary running back in Las Vegas this year. I mean, this is a running back room that has a former first round selection in 2019 getting paid that money in Josh Jacobs. And then they just paid Kenyon Drake the $11 million guaranteed. I don't think they're bringing in another running back. So I think Kenyon Drake is actually a very safe option at the running back position, and I would prefer him over these running backs that are going off the board right now. A big thing is, though, if I'm going to be drafting 200 of these teams this season, like I'm not going to be able to take Kenyon Drake 30 picks ahead of ADP and take him. I mean, he's probably going 40 picks behind Rachaad White right now. But like, if you ask me, Mason, who do you prefer, Kenyon Drake or Keel Herbert in a vacuum? I'm not gonna lie. I don't want to say I prefer Kenyon Drake, but they're the same to me. Oh, Jerry says no, he saw him on the draft board. Oh, okay. Thank you for clarifying, my man. Rondell Robinson, I can never say that name. But nonetheless, a wide receiver that has a nice athletic profile. Jay, and I got to clown you. Sky Moore is an option that I understand he was productive, but if you go back and you actually look at what Sky Moore did at Western Michigan whenever you had Dwayne Eskridge there as well, I mean, not 2021, but in 2020, Dwayne Eskridge's last season there, and I don't think we're here scrambling to draft Dwayne Eskridge. Dwayne Eskridge accounted for 40% of that receiving offense. Sky Moore was down there at like 20%. Dwayne Eskridge like doubled the production in the same offense on the same team as Sky Moore. So like I would rather literally take Dwayne Eskridge in the last round here than take Sky Moore in the 15th. Trey McBride goes to the 1604. Ash Blake has only taken one quarterback in Matthew Stafford. Interesting. Okay, so we have four running backs, 2 quarterbacks, 7 wide receivers, and 2 tight ends. When we take Irv Smith Jr. here, I'm probably done taking tight ends. I mean, if we get a ridiculous value falling to us at the position, sure, we'll click the button on it. Yeah, see, Drake has an ADP of 215. I'm fine taking Drake 5 rounds before this. Brian Robinson, big-bodied running back. The question is going to be the size. He stayed a very long time in Alabama, but can't blame him staying in Alabama. When he first got there, you had the combination of Josh Jacobs, Najee Harris, and Damian Harris all on the roster. How is he supposed to get on the field when you have those running backs there and you show up and you're 18 years old? Cole Beasley goes to the 1607. Cole Beasley going to be 33 this upcoming season. Marquez Valdez-Scantling at the 1606. Obviously, MVS probably the best pick in the draft if he is with Rodgers next year at this draft price. Crazy Train at the 1609. Jan says, you better make this draft private so I don't bump it in 12 months. I got you. I got you, my man. Okay, we're going to take Malik Willis. This is what we were talking about. I mean, thinking that we were probably going to be avoiding a third quarterback unless we got a massive value. Malik Willis, in my opinion, is that massive value. If you're looking at NFL mock drafts right now, he's actually skyrocketed up those draft boards where he's projected to be the first quarterback off the board in some. I mean, him and Kenny Pickett are neck and neck about the 14th pick overall. So I'm going to take Malik Willis here because he does have that rushing upside. If he were to start in the NFL, he does have league-breaking potential. Okay, so now we are done with quarterback and tight end. We are only drafting running back and receiver from here on out. Isaac ends up going with Kenyon Drake. Okay, my dog is out there chewing on something. I'm going to have to go figure this out. Okay. When in doubt, we're taking our guy Hamler. Let me go see what my dog has. Hopefully, this is not too bad. I'll show this draft board while we're gone. Okay, there we go. Let's scroll down. David and Joe at the 1703. Matt Ryan at the 1704. Interested to see where Ash Blake takes this, considering he only has one quarterback. How many quarterbacks left? I guess, yeah, he can go. He can still get a start. He can take Kenny Pickett if he needs to. Jayan says 750 Dwayne Eskridge. Let me do this math real quick. I literally made a video about this yesterday. Of course, it's not out on the Dynasty channel yet, but I was looking at this math yesterday. This is why I'm just off of Sky Moore, and I'm not going to be drafting Sky Moore at all. Okay, so keep in mind, Dwayne Eskridge was a very old player, but I mean, he did not play wide receiver the entire time at Western Michigan, so that's why he's a little bit older than most. But if we are talking just Sky Moore in particular, which is a player going in every single one of these underdog drafts, let's compare 2020 Western Michigan. Let's compare these two players. Okay, so you have, let me pull up receiving yards. 768, 128 receiving yards a game for Dwayne Eskridge. and 77 for Sky Moore. Dwayne Eskridge, I believe, let me go through and do this math one more time just to show y'all how dominant Dwayne Eskridge was at Western Michigan and how Sky Moore was still on the roster. And this is how dominant Dwayne Eskridge was. So I believe we were at that 128 receiving yards a game. 45% of the passing yards went to Dwayne Eskridge. That is an absurd rate. Dwayne Eskridge looked at Sky Moore and said, you know what, buddy? You're probably not going to get anything here. It's probably not going to work out for you. I mean, which is crazy to think about, knowing that Dwayne Eskridge played some defensive back whenever he was at Western Michigan. Okay, so Keyshawn Vaughn, the only running back in Tampa under contract next year, goes the 1804. Brian Edwards of the 1803. Ah, yeah. Good old days fighting the Brian Edwards truthers. Good old days. Good old days. Okay, so let's go look at, probably not taking Justin Jackson. Zamir White, a running back that, I mean, yes, was a super high-profile guy going to Georgia, but gets there, doesn't catch passes at all. Those passes go to James Cook. We're sitting here with 8 wide receivers, 4 running backs. We're going to end up taking 2 more RBs and 1 more receiver. Actually, probably... We've taken Jamal Williams here before. I don't want to be taking too many rookie running backs at the back end of this roster. I feel like every draft I want to be coming away with one of these players, because I can guarantee you a lot of these running backs will rise in ADP as we go through the offseason. But if you just continue to stack these guys on and on and on. Weidemeyer here, a very athletic tight end. Jalen Weidemeyer, 6'6", 265 pounds as well. The main concern that you have with Jalen Weidemeyer is he decided to go to Texas A&M University, so you really have to question the decision-making capabilities. Okay, so Justin Ross. I would argue that maybe Justin Ross has a higher ceiling than George Pickens if he's able to stay healthy. I mean, with Justin Ross, he was right there with T. Higgins in terms of his receiving yards on a per-game basis at 18 years old at Clemson. I'm going to end up taking Jamal Williams, however. Should still be under contract with the Detroit Lions this upcoming season. And at the same time with Jamal Williams, I mean, you know he's going to be getting touches every single week. So if we're taking him at 18-11 at pick 215, I'm fine with it. Do I want to take James Cook? Baby Cow says, thoughts on Justin Ross? I loved him when he was playing with Lawrence, but then he missed that whole season. Yeah, big thing is, I mean, whenever you had the issue with Justin Ross and his neck, a lot of people thought he was never going to be able to come back. Love the Donald Parham pick here by Isaac. The question is, does he get a contract this upcoming season? But yeah, a big thing is here with Justin Ross, you don't know if he's going to be healthy, but as we were saying, I can pull this up in 1 second. I want to pull up Grinding the Mocks, though, and see. I want to see where James Cook's projected to go in the NFL right now, in the NFL draft. James Cook projected to go beginning of the 4th round. Zamir White's projected to go about 20 picks before. Take Zamir White in this one, James Cook in the next. I actually think I like James Cook a little bit more as a better receiving running back coming out of the backfield. But if Zamir White's going to have that higher ADP and he's going to have the higher expectations in the NFL draft as well, we can take some spots with Zamir White. We'll hide my camera for everybody here. I know y'all don't need to see my ugly face. But yeah, let me go back and look at what we actually had with Justin Ross in that 2018 season at Clemson. I mean, this was a pretty special year because you had Justin Ross as a younger player than T. Higgins. And then, of course, this is an offense that also had, oh my God, this is ridiculous. Okay. Hunter Renfrow. I forgot Hunter Renfrow was on this team as well. See, oh my God. I'm probably going to have to make a video with this. Okay, but if we're looking at this here. Ooh, wrong way to go about that. Justin Ross, 71.42 receiving yards per game. His true freshman year. True freshman season, 71.42 receiving yards per game. T. Higgins, 62. At an older age, T. Higgins, less productive at Clemson. Hunter Renfrow, at an older age, 36.26. Half the receiving yards on a per game basis that you had from Justin Ross. You also have Amari Rodgers on this team. Amari Rodgers ends up going in the third round to the Green Bay Packers this past season. And Amari Rodgers doesn't come close to Justin Ross either. Oh my gosh. Justin Ross in less games played has more receiving yards than T. Higgins, Amari Rodgers, and Hunter Renfrow this season at 18 years old. This is what we're talking about. Like with George Pickens, like I can see the upside case with George Pickens. But like if we're comparing George Pickens here in the 11th round compared to Justin Ross in the 19th, if both players have injury concerns, I'm probably going to prefer going Justin Ross. Isaac coming out says, roast my trash team, Drake and Hubbard, though. I did like the Drake and Hubbard selection. Okay, so let's go through. Let's check out Isaac's team. Okay, so from a roster construction standpoint, let's just go position by position. Quarterback, Jalen Hurts, Tua, Kenny Pickett. I think I'm fine taking 3 quarterbacks if you wait until you take 2 in the 13th. It's definitely borderline where you could get away with only taking 2. I think if it was 18 rounds, I probably would only prefer 2 quarterbacks with this build. Running back, Taylor, Gibson, Elijah Mitchell. I would say when we go 3 running backs within our first 4 picks, I'm most likely only going to be building around 5 running backs in this roster, especially when we go Kareem Hunt in the 8th, Chuba Hubbard, Kenyon Drake. I like the value with these running backs, even though, of course, you're reaching on Drake about 20 picks with ADP. I just think that given the Drake contract, he has such a high floor. However, I think whenever we invest this heavily into the running back position at the very top of the draft, like I'm going to be drafting 6 running backs on our team, but we also ended up drafting running backs a lot later than you did. I think I probably would prefer using an extra roster spot on this team, especially when we draft 3 quarterbacks and 3 tight ends. I think, Isaac, I think you're definitely 1 wide receiver light at the minimum. I mean, other people would tell you that you probably need 2 more. But especially if we're going to go 3 quarterbacks, 3 tight ends, and we're taking these players in the 6th, 7th rounds as well, I don't think you're going to have enough wide receiver firepower in the best ball format to get it done. Okay, sorry about that. I did not mean to do that to y'all. Switch this over. We're going to be drafting a wide receiver here for our 9th wide receiver. See, I was more willing to go slimmer with receiver, considering we take 1 in the 2nd, we take 1 in the 3rd as well. Okay, so Jalen Tolbert is actually someone that we have a video coming out about soon. I mean, Jalen Tolbert's a perfect example of like looking at Sky Moore versus Jalen Tolbert. Jalen Tolbert, in my opinion, has just as intriguing of a production profile. And I mean, more importantly with Jalen Tolbert, this is someone you're getting in the last round. He's bigger than Sky Moore as well. So let's take, I'm honestly going to take Dwayne Eskridge. We're going to take the player that we were talking about being more productive than Sky Moore previously, and also with Russell Wilson. Okay, so JN wants us to look at this team. I'm just making sure that once I think Isaac gets a pick, we're going to have to load this draft board back up. Yeah, let's pull this back up. Okay, so if anybody was unable to see the entire draft board, here it is. I want to check out JN's team real quick. Okay, so at running back, Najee, Javonte Williams. Love the fact that we're just hammering wide receivers through these rounds. If we're talking about the players in particular, my preference is I think Calvin Ridley is just the best value you can get in this range. Love getting the elite tight end with Darren Waller at the 312. What could be an intriguing conversation point is, would you prefer the combination of, and of course hindsight's 2020, but that's why we do this, so we can hopefully have this in mind going forward. Would you prefer the combination of Kelsey in the 2nd and then J.K. Dobbins at the 312 or Javonte Williams, Darren Waller? Personally, I would probably rather go with the Travis Kelsey and J.K. Dobbins selection, but maybe I'm a little bit higher on Dobbins than most. Darnell Mooney at the 512. I would prefer Hollywood Brown, as we've seen Hollywood Brown be a top 10 wide receiver with Lamar previously. I just think that Hollywood and Michael Thomas are great values here. Kenneth Walker, love the pick. Aaron Rodgers, love the value of quarterback in this range. Will Fuller, obviously, of the elite spike week potential. I think Will Fuller would be my favorite wide receiver in particular. I don't know if he's my favorite player in general, but definitely my favorite receiver in this range. We've already discussed George Pickens. We've already discussed Sky Moore and a couple of these rookies. If we're looking at running back, Sony Michel is going to be interesting. I simply just don't know where Sony Michel is going to end up. Rondell Watt. Jan, I think that at some point, and of course, I don't know. Okay, Jan, here we go. What are we doing here? What are we doing? But with this, I don't know, and I definitely don't have the right answer. I would love to know someone's opinion that is smarter than me, but there is definitely going to be a tipping point on where a lot of these rookies are values, but based on how extreme the bust rates will be with a couple of these guys like Robinson and Moore, where we don't know what the draft capital is going to be, I feel like it's very smart to take your shots on these players and try to get 2 to 3 of them in every single draft. However, at the same time, I think we may have to limit ourselves. I am unsure if in our wide receiver core, we can base it around Treylon Burks, George Pickens, Sky Moore, and Robinson all on the same team. I think at some point, we're probably just going to have to say, hell, I mean, we need to go through, we need to cap ourselves. And of course, thank you so much for everybody hanging out with us in this live stream. If you have not done so already, go down there, drop a like in the stream, use promo code FLOCK, sign up for Underdog Fantasy. They'll match your first deposit dollar for dollar up to $100. And yeah, that's all I got for you. Really hope you enjoyed the live stream, and hopefully we get to see you